Okay, so hello, my name is Robyn, and today we're going to veer a little bit away from LLMs and AI that been talking about the past few weeks. And I'll do a little intro to marketing and ads, because unfortunately, in this world, you have to be able to sell yourself and your products. So right off the bat, what is marketing? Marketing is talking about the bigger picture. So who you are as a brand and your strategy on how you're going to share that with the world. So what are your values? What are your priorities? What can you do? And how is that going to help people? So an example that I pulled from one of Nike's old marketing handbooks is that they're focusing on bringing inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. You can see that this isn't super literal. They're not saying, hey, we make shoes, they'll make you run fast. It's more about the values and the feelings. Advertising, on the other hand, is the implementation of this, how you're going to get your message in front of consumers. So here we have some examples of the Find Your Greatness campaign that Nike did during the 2012 London Olympics. So the advertising side of things could be a YouTube video, a billboard, a poster, a bus bench. It's the implementation of your marketing message. So once you define what your message is, your next step is going to be to define who your target market is. Who are you talking to? This is really important because even if I have one message that I'm trying to sell to everyone, the way that I speak to different populations is going to be different. If I want to give a cookie to a baby, I'm going to phrase that differently than if I'm speaking to an elderly relative, and that's going to be very different to how I would give a command to my dog. So even if one approach is really, really effective for one specific audience, it might not work with another audience. It might even offend another audience. So we have to define who we're talking to before we start building our message. So some things to consider when you're picking your target market is who's going to get the most from your product. It's easier to say my target market is everyone with money. But again, the more general you are, the less specific and the less informed your message can be, and it might have less of an impact on your specific population. So when you're defining your target market, you might want to look at the demographics, so the age, gender, income, or occupation, because all of these things influence how we see the world. So it will influence how someone's going to accept or reject your advertisement. Also, the morals, the attitude, the lifestyle of your target market, what they believe in, and the geographic location. This could be really general, like people who live in Canada, or it could be more specific, people who spend time in a biolab, or people who spend time on Jasper Ave in Edmonton. And all this information, again, helps you refine your message. We have some examples from Nike again. Their target market is 18 to 25-year-olds who are intense, determined, and cool. Of course, there's people outside of this age range that are wearing Nike products, but it's the target market. The center of the bullseye is what we're defining with this demographic. Obviously, we'll hit outside of there some of the time, but we're really refining this message for a specific group of people. Once we have our target market, we can work on what is going to be the formatting of our advertisement. So we can start by looking at our target market and trying to figure out what kind of content they're consuming, where do they hang out, and that can inform our format. So for example, 18 to 25-year-olds spend a lot of time on social media. So a good format might be a social media advertisement or even just a social media account. Nike's demographic is driven by status and quality. So maybe an interesting advertising format would be a high-profile traditional ad, something like a billboard in Times Square or a full page in the New York Times that's going to show status and quality. If our demographic follows fashion trends, we might want to do something with Vogue, People, GQ. Again, you're going to consider the age. Are 18 to 25-year-olds going to look in a physical magazine? Or do we want to do web ads? Intense, determined, cool, maybe a good format would be an athlete sponsorship or partnering with a high-profile person that our target demographic is interested in. And then lastly, we have kind of social and environmental issues. If our target market is interested in that, we want to be really conscious not only of the direct format, so maybe a 200-page printed catalog is not going to go over that well, but also the context. If I have the best billboard ever with a really, really impactful social message, but I put it on the side of Trump Tower. That's not going to go over so well potentially with my audience. In general, when we talk about format, there's two sides. There's traditional and there's digital. Traditional is things like radio commercials, TV advertisements, billboards, posters, printing your face on a bus bench if you're a realtor, putting something on the side of a car. This format is generally more expensive and it's slower. It takes time to design it and then send it off to a printer, have it prepared for printing, have it actually physically printed and installed. It's like a longer time scale and it's more expensive, but this can imply credibility or stability. So if that's something you're really looking for in your brand, traditional can be the way to go. It also can target really large audiences. If I have a billboard on a highway, there's a really large number of people that are going to see that. There are also some instances, like if I put a decal on the side of my vehicle, where that's a high upfront cost, but that's still on there for as long as I'm driving around the city, as long as I have that vehicle, whereas sometimes digital formats are continuous cost. So yeah, the other side is digital. This is something like a social media ad or an account. And by that, you could advertise just by having a social media account. That's what we would call organic marketing. You have a regular profile, not a paid profile, and you try to boost engagement through that. Or again, you can have paid ads, Google ads, search engine optimization, emails or newsletters. These are all forms of digital marketing. The pros of this are that it's really personalizable. It's immediate. So as soon as I design something, I can get it out there and see what it looks like. It's also a really good format for A/B testing. So I can have two versions of one ad and immediately see which one looks better and which one is getting better quantifiable results, which is another pro of digital advertising. We can count how many people are clicking on this, how many people are watching the full ad on my YouTube video, versus traditional media where it's really difficult to see how many people are reading the full advertisement in a newspaper. It's also faster and can be cheaper, and you can make it super, super precise. You can take information that you have about your target market, you can take data and really customize ads to fit to that person that you're advertising to. One really common digital approach, it's a pipeline that you've probably interacted with before, is to start with a digital advertisement. So you have something really, really cool that's going to get a direct response. People will click on it, people will Google it, people will scan a QR code that's going to direct them to your web page. Once they're at your web page, you offer them some type of value item in exchange for their information, which is usually their email. So depending on your target audience, the value item might change. Maybe it's a discount code. Maybe you input your email to download a handbook of 30 quick and easy recipes. Maybe you input your email to get the latest episode of a podcast with a really high profile guest. So you exchange the value item for their email. And once you have their email, you can continue contacting them with value items or perceived value items until you have sales. So again, in the email, it could be a discount code, be a newsletter, whatever your target audience would be interested in. And figuring out what that is usually requires some research and looking at the demographics again. So once we've thought about our format, what is going to be the actual content of our advertisement? So content can also be grouped into kind of two broad categories. One is brand awareness. This is where you're not marketing a specific product. You're not trying to sell one specific thing. You're just trying to generate an emotional attachment to the brand and generate familiarity, because people buy what they're familiar with. On the other hand, you might be selling a product directly. This kind of ad showcases the benefits, the features, the functionality of a project. So when do you choose each one? If you're selling a product, this is for when you're really, really confident in the quality of your product is the best, and sharing the features with someone is going to get it sold. Brand awareness is, again, when you're trying to get that familiarity bias going. Maybe Nike is making a bunch of gym shorts that are exactly like gym shorts you could buy from Adidas or any other company, but because you have an emotional attachment to the brand, you might lean towards getting a pair of Nike shorts. There's another thing to consider when you're choosing the type of content, and that's, where is your user at? Are they in a discovering mode or are they in a searching mode? So if I'm discovering, maybe I'm on my social media, I'm scrolling through posts, I don't want to be hit in the face with someone trying to really forcefully sell me a shoe. I'm just looking and I'm enjoying. I'm much more likely to watch an interesting video or an emotional video and engage with brand awareness type of advertising versus if I'm on Google searching best shoes to buy, the product type of advertisement is going to be more impactful and more useful. Maybe I'm on YouTube watching videos about fastest running shoes. I'm shopping at the mall and I see a physical poster selling a specific shoe. So for content, again, there's things to consider: the context of your clientele, of your target market, and what you need to focus on with a brand when you're choosing what's in your advertisement itself. So finally, we're going to touch a little bit on graphics. I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I'll try to speed through some basic concepts. First of all is color. So color is very emotional. There's a lot of psychology that's gone into color. People think that colors like a dark blue represent more leadership and stability. Color like neon green might be more exciting and fun and youthful. There's also complementary and analogous colors, all of these theories on how colors pair together. A lot of it, I think, can just be intuitive. If you look at something and it looks good, that's probably a good way to go. Get some feedback from everyone around you. If they think it looks good, it's probably good to go. Do a little bit of research into what your target market might associate with these colors, just to make sure you're not doing anything crazy or offensive. But again, there's a lot of color theory, but if you use your intuition, you should be safe. When we're talking about analogous colors, that just means colors that are neighbors on the color wheel. This is an RGB color wheel. If you're looking at additive color, your color wheel might look a little bit different. This is color that's on a screen. Analogous are neighbors, and they're good neighbors. When you put them right beside each other, they look good. Complementary colors, they complement each other. They play off each other well, but if you put them directly beside each other, sometimes they hurt your eyes, like red and green. But again, this is something that we can see visually right away, so just use your common sense when it comes to color. Another thing is layout. So balance your text, avoiding orphans or widows. These are just terms we use for single words or short phrases that are at the beginning or end of paragraphs. They visually kind of disturb the paragraph and they make it a little bit harder to read. You also want to look at the reg. The reg is what we call the outside edge of text. So you don't want to have every single word hyphenated in your paragraph. That again reduces readability. But it also is hard to read when every single line is of a different length. So you want to find a good balance so you have a nice even reg. And then lastly, again, some common sense is proportion, balance, and consistency. A good safe fallback is to center everything if you don't know what to do. If you want to have a crazy artistic choice, like putting your text really far to one side of a page, make sure that's consistent. Make sure every paragraph looks the same. If it's just a one-off, it's going to come off as a mistake. But again, humans really love balance. Our eyes love balance. So if you aren't sure what to do, make everything consistent and do some centering. Our last thing we're going to cover now is logos. Logos are a big part of branding and marketing. It's creating a way that people can instantly recognize who you are. It's something memorable and recognizable. There's a lot of other factors you can include in your logo, but at its core, it's a memorable and recognizable image. You want this to be something clear and something that's unique. Clear doesn't have to be minimal. It's just something that, again, is recognizable and memorable. A lot of metal band logos are not very clear. The shape is obscure. The text is obscure. It's not clear. But we can also go too far in the other direction, and we can have these logos where the shapes are very obvious. The logo is distinct, but it is not quite memorable. It looks like something that DALL-E maybe made for me after a quick query. So some examples that I personally like. This is maybe a matter of taste. Maybe you dislike it. But Coca-Cola, Harley-Davidson, and this is an older version of the Bacardi logo. They're all quite clear. You can read the text, you can see the images. They're unique, they have interesting shapes within them, but they're not too cluttered. So again, recognizability. Maybe when you are going to make your law firm logo, you go towards blue because it's a stable color that indicates trust. You're going to go with a serif font because it shows that you're a little bit more established and serious. But then you disappear into the crowd. So then at this point, you could have the best ad I've ever seen. I really want to buy from you, but I don't know who you are. And we can even do a little pop quiz. Let me know in the chat if you think this was on the previous slide or not. We can't really tell because it is neither recognizable nor memorable. Scaling is also super important for logos. When you're designing a logo, it's really good to start in black and white so that you know your logo is going to be versatile. If we look at the Firefox logo, the newer version, there's two colors side by side. The blue is touching the orange. So then when we try to represent this with only one color, that little distinction disappears. It's still about the same shape, but it loses a bit of its recognizability. Another example is Emily Carr University. They have transparencies and colors all touching each other, and it just kind of turns into a shape. So you either have to be really clever about making an interesting black and white version of your logo, or try to keep colors not touching each other. You also want to make sure that it's scalable. You can read it when it's really, really tiny or really, really large. And a factor in this is vectorizing. So even if it's legible, small and large, if you only have a really low resolution raster version of your logo, and you decide to do a billboard in Times Square, it's going to look really blurry. And your logo won't be readable. So having a vector version like a EPS file, an SVG file, is super important for your logo. And you might be wondering, why does it matter for the black and white? Everything's digital now. We have digital printing. I have a digital screen. Why can't I use as many colors as I'd like? A big factor is cost. If you move into screen printing or creating product packaging, every color you add in screen printing basically doubles the cost. If you want to do something like an embossed journal or an embossed business card, embossing doesn't show color. You just have to have the shapes that determine your logo, as well as things like etched glass. So if you're just doing a one-off logo for email newsletter for your 5 closest friends, maybe it doesn't matter so much. But if there's any interest in expanding, it's really important to make sure your logo works in black and white. The last thing I'll touch on is making your logo literal. This is, I think, especially important to consider working in kind of a tech environment. If I make a logo of a light bulb because I'm this super high-tech and cool electricity company, but my incandescent light bulb logo is now out of date because we've moved on to new technology, and now I look like I'm behind the pack, and my message isn't as clear anymore. So it's safer to avoid using technology or images of technology in your logo, just so you don't get dated too quickly. And of course, there's exceptions to every rule, but it's just a good kind of path to follow. Logos design process, you want to start with researching. So maybe looking up law firm Edmonton to see what everyone else is doing before you make your dark blue logo with a serif font. Brainstorming, being a little bit creative. Start with black and white, get feedback. Maybe I see a logo one way and you're interpreting it in a way that's different from me. Or maybe my target audience is going to see a shape that I don't see, kind of like an ink blot test. Refine it and get feedback again. It's all about feedback. Especially if you can get feedback from your target audience because they're the ones that you want to enjoy this. That's really, really valuable. And so just a review of everything we covered today. The first thing we want to do when you're starting your marketing journey is figure out what is your message? Who are you as a brand? What are your values and your priorities? What can you offer to people and how will that help them? Then you define who they are that you're going to help. Your market so that you know who you're talking to. Then you can look at your format. Is it going to be digital or traditional? Will it be through social media or in a magazine? Then you look at your content. Am I trying to represent my brand or am I selling one specific product? And then you implement that with some graphics. These are my sources, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have.